Hello everybody. Today we have a video inspired by the Bald Omni-Man, not quite challenge, but sort of invitational that's been going around. I've been invited to share the 10 lifts that I would use to speedrun my current physique by YouTube user Oscar's Wider, a friend of mine. And we're gonna get right into the meat of it with the number one lift, which is the back squat. The back squat for me has been responsible for putting probably the most overall mass on my frame, in my quads, my adductors, my glutes, even a lot of my trap development, just because I haven't isolated them over my training journey so far. I would actually credit to the back squat. Spinal erector development, core development, a lot of it comes from that fundamental heavy overload movement done in an ATG manner. The second movement I would use is the bench press, because I've personally bench pressed, and I do bench press in such a way that it's not always purely pec, and the way I did it for most of my lifting journey was a very even blend of pec and tricep and delt. So in terms of my pushing musculature, I've reaped a lot out of the bench press, and if I had to speedrun my physique again, I would use the bench press again to get to where I am. The third movement that I would use to speedrun my physique, which is almost responsible for all of my hamstring mass and a lot of my back thickness, is the Romania deadlift. I personally started here in my basement with a situation in which I couldn't conventionally deadlift, and I couldn't sumo deadlift either because I don't have deadlift safe flooring and I didn't have standard plates or a standard bar. So I immediately had to resort to a more strict hip hingey variation, and I think that's been greatly to my benefit in a hypertrophy context. In a strength context, I'm still incredibly weak at conventional and sumo deadlifting, but I would still pick this as my primary posterior chain developer. The fourth exercise I have is the dumbbell row. Now, this is a more recent addition to my program, but I've kind of fallen in love with it for its ability to train the back unilaterally while also challenging core stabilization and just allowing you to get a massive stretch on your back with a very low fatigue cost. So it will allow me to, in the context of only needing 10 lifts to speedrun my physique, to spam it a little more than would probably be advised in a regular program. In the same vein, the pull-up is something I would include for lat development and upper back development. Now, earlier in my training journey, all I did was chin-ups. I was very bad at pull-ups and I didn't want to do them because of that. But as I became better at pull-ups, I fell more and more in love with them, to the point where they are now equivalent with chin-ups for me in terms of enjoyment factor. So really, it could be a pull-up, it could be a chin-up for this slot, but I chose the pull-up because of the extra back thickness modifier. The sixth lift I would use, incredibly important for the development of my physique, are the biceps, and thus the dumbbell curl makes it stand as the sixth lift. It is a fairly spammable variation. There are lots of ways to dumbbell curl. You can dumbbell curl strictly, you can do alternating. So if I had to speedrun my physique, I would use this as a way to build up my elbow flexors pretty quick. The seventh lift I would use is, unlike most of the things that we've talked about up until now, just slightly more exotic, but ultimately it should be quite familiar to anyone, as it is essentially just a skull crusher variation. It's a decline dumbbell skull crusher, or I have it written here as an extension. This is just a way to unilaterally train my triceps in a way that is very easy on the wrists and it's easier on the shoulders, making it more capable of being used in a high frequency context. The eighth lift I would include is a split squat of some variety. So that could be a Bulgarian split squat, or a lunge, or this could really just be unilateral work, but I've chosen the split squat because of its holistic benefits to things that are kind of left out by a lot of the things that we've covered so far. With the back squat, we can build a lot of mass, same with the RDL. The split squat itself is a good hypertrophy exercise, but it also works a lot of the muscles and the capacities which are left undertrained by those two lifts. So it works more of your adductors, your abductors, your knee stability. It allows you to get more volume in without taxing the spinal erectors and axially loading. Overall, it's an amazing lift. It's just cardiovascularly hard, but there are ways to get around that, and you can see Bulgarian split squats being cardiovascularly hard as a benefit in itself. The 9th lift I have here is the upright row. Like I said earlier, I don't have a ton of trap development, but of what trap development I do have, I attribute it to the upright row. It's a good mix of, for me, side delts, rear delts, and upper traps, mostly delts though. And it allows you to get a bilateral, highly progressible means of training those without it being a press. If I were to include overhead press, you could make an argument for that I would get more front delt benefits, or I'd get more overall strength benefits. But from a bodybuilding context, if I want to train my rear delts better and my side delts better, I would pick an upright row over an overhead press every single time. The last lift I include are dips. You can do all kinds of variations. You can do tempo, you can do pause. Much like with all of these other variations, you can modify them in minor ways here and there to make them more sustainable or more bodybuilding specific. But dips I really enjoy because they're an extended range of motion variation for the pecs. And I find that when I don't include some kind of extended range of motion movement for the pecs, like a dip or a deficit push-up, that I'm more prone to getting tweaky in the pecs or in the shoulders. A lot of people experience the opposite, but I find that dips are a great way to get something that is very pushing muscle specific without being a bench press, which allows me to avoid tweaking or overusing some joint or muscle. Some honorable mentions I have, some stuff that just didn't make the list, are hanging leg raises. These are vital to core development in my opinion. They're like a curl for your abs. If you want to develop the biggest abs you can, in my opinion, you should have some sort of active spinal flexion movement. A second honorable mention is the calf raise, because despite what all this is, we didn't get any calf recruitment in any of these. So if you want to speedrun your own physique, that would be the part that would hold me back if I only had to pick 10 lifts. It would be finding a way to develop my calves. And the very last thing, which is an honorable mention, which only just barely didn't make it in, is actually a leg curl. Leg curls, I think, are utterly vital to the development of the hamstrings. Hinging is amazing for the hamstrings, don't get me wrong, but if you want to get the biggest hamstrings you possibly can, I am of the opinion that you should definitely be leg curling in some capacity. I personally use, in my home gym setup, rings to set up a way to leg curl, and I find it's a very effective exercise, which I think more people should really be doing. So all that in mind, these are all the lifts I would use to speedrun my physique, plus those honorable mentions. That's all I have for now. Take care, train hard, and have a great day.